All right, folks. My name is Rich, and I have Carl Richards on, or Richard Carl, whatever. Uh, that's a little inside joke from off stream. And this is the X's and O's of Life interviews. And I found this fella on Podmatch, and he is 25 years into the game, right? So long-winded fella. Um, so he has a bevy of podcast information and what you should, like, why people should do it, and why it's an important part of, I guess, really society. I guess in that sense. So um, that is my lackluster introduction, as you all should be used to at this point. And I'm going to let him jump in and get to talking. So Carl, go ahead. Tell the
Richard
people who you are.
Richard Carl. Oh, wait a minute, Richard.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah,
Right,
it's
right. I
both
gotta get the right name with it. In fact,
of them.
it'll be easy to remember your first name because
Yes.
my last name basically just a little bit shorter because I don't know your your folks I guess like to keep things simple I guess. And
Oh
anyway,
no, my actual name is Richard, but I'm like, no, that's too formal for me.
there you go. Okay.
I have too many tattoos to be formal.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show. And yeah, shout out to Podmatch for sure for connecting us. It's a great platform, and to qualify, 25 years not in podcasting, but in the pre-podcasting era, there was this thing called broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
For those who remember it, radio, television. This was pre go to Netflix. This is before you had plug in your phone in your car to listen to tunes or even listen to satellite radio. I guess existed around the time I was getting into broadcasting, but certainly it was literally tuning your radio to listen to the radio.
Right.
And I spent, as I said, 25 years town to town, up and down the dial, just like they say on WKRP in Cincinnati. It literally was a career like that. And then the transition into podcasting happened because my my career in radio, there's a standing joke. They say you haven't made it in broadcasting until you've been fired from at least one job. So I was fired. Yay! That meant all of a sudden I was successful, and really started to reinvent myself. And not sure what I was going to do. Started a part-time business doing speaker training with the full intention of taking it full time. And what happened there was I had a colleague who came up to me and said, "Oh, you're doing speaker training. You should also think about doing podcasting." And keep in mind, this is around 2012. There were, I don't know, 50, I'm exaggerating. There were probably more like, I don't know, 75,000 podcasts then. And a lot of people were saying, what's a podcast? Is this a thing? Is this really going to be a thing that'll take off? And certainly I didn't know what it was. And again, I'm working to get myself and other, my students on live stages, not this platform that nobody knows what it is. Finally came around, I guess, about 6 or 7 years later and said, oh, yeah, maybe I should start a podcast. And that was after seeing a guy by the name of, I don't know if you've heard the name, Rich, if you've heard the name Sam Crowley. He
I
started,
feel like I have, yeah.
yeah, he started podcasting when podcasts were still in diapers. And he's a really cool cat. And he basically, convinced me and a room of about 100 other people, you can start a podcast. It's not rocket science. You just maybe need some help and guidance and direction. So you can figure out what you don't know. Let's face it, you don't know what you don't know. And I thought I knew everything, and apparently I didn't. So it took me a while to launch my show, but once I did, I thought, why don't more people know about this? So I tried to incorporate it into my speaker training business. Again, because it was part-time, I was very unsuccessful at it in that moment. But then this wild thing happened around the world. Maybe you remember. It was COVID-19. Maybe you've heard of
Yeah,
that.
yep.
So,
Yeah. I think I saw a blurb on the news, yeah.
something like that, a global pandemic. They come around every, I don't know, 50 or 100 years or something like that. So that was really the pivot in my business life to really go, well, maybe this is an opportunity to not only educate myself more deeply. By this point, I already had a podcast, but then also say, well, what about the people who are now, they've been sidelined? They're business owners, they're coaches, they're consultants, they're looking to get on live stages, but guess what? Live stages don't exist anymore. So at least temporarily they didn't. So there was an opportunity to get people on stages but on virtual platforms. And automatically I thought, well, a podcast is a great way to do that because you own the space, really. I mean, this is your show, Rich. It's not mine. Thanks for having me
Uh,
on it. I really appreciate it. But it
I
changed me.
appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, and you get to do what you want with it. You can make it casual, you can make it formal, you can make it for business, you can make it for fun, you can make it, some of the top podcasts in the world are about true crime and sports and entertainment,
And I
comedy.
listen to those.
Yeah, yeah. Not to mention, of course, Joe Rogan. That's another type of show altogether. But there's so
Yeah.
many different types of podcasts out there that if you're a business owner, it would only make sense to use it to elevate your credibility. I mean, people have done that for years, writing books, or back in the days when radio was actually, when it actually meant something, they would get experts on the radio to talk about their latest book or their what it is that makes them an expert, right? So that was certainly an opportunity. And here we are about 2.5, 3 years later, having made that transition and no longer in radio, and really just out there to get the word out about not just what it is that I do, but the power behind it. And I'm glad I'm talking to another podcaster, because why wouldn't I be if we met each other on Podmatch? Because
Right.
you get it. You get the power of the medium of what it's doing to expand you and get in front of people who like and trust. So yeah, that's a little bit of my rant about where I've been and where I'm at now.
It's just so funny to me. The more I do these things, the interviews that I find on Podmatch,
Yeah.
the more this, it's not disparaging or discouraging to me, but it's like I feel like so many people's stories are so similar to what I did, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this is an insanely original idea. No one's done this, and everyone's like, yeah, so we were talking and we had random conversations and we figured we'd put that out into the ether and see if people want to hear our silly rants. It's like, yeah, that's about it. And my biggest regret is not starting this during the pandemic. I completely pooped my pants there, and wish I would have jumped in. But it's awesome to kind of see you be able to transition. And I mean, I don't know how much of a transition it really ends up being, because I mean, it's not that far akin from each other, but you are right. This is your show. You get to. I kind of have a bit of a running thing where I'll say something a little not scandalous, and I'm basically like, make your own damn podcast if you don't like it. What to tell you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the cool little platform that has been discovered and created, and you get to do anything you want. You're right. It is a beautiful thing.
I think that's the difference too between it and what we've come to know as the more conventional forms of media, as I mentioned, radio and television and even print. It's a very formalized and structured way of communicating, be it in an editorial sense, be it in you look at some of the well-known talk shows on television and even on radio, that have been around or have been in, now in the annals of history, so to speak. They're very, you look back at it and, we've had about 100 years of radio, maybe a little bit more, maybe 50, 60, well, maybe more than that, 70 years of television. So they figured it out. They figured out what formats work, what's going to make money. That's how these networks think about it. They don't think about it in the sense of, like you said, what happens if I just crack open a microphone and have a conversation with somebody, and wherever that goes is where it goes. And there's so many opportunities to have more of a free-flowing conversation, and there's more, how do I say it? There's more viability in this space now because there is so much variety. If you want to listen to two guys like Rich and Carl Richards, rather, Rich Dow and Carl Richards talk, hey, that's cool. You can do that. If you want to listen to Joe Rogan, you can do that. If you want to listen to a business coach tell you how to be a better business owner, great. You want to listen to a real estate investor who is going to help you go out there and, kick ass in the real estate real estate place. That's all there, right? If you want to listen to something that's religious or faith based, it's all there. So it's not as formatted as the other medias out there. That's one of the things that I think has been the transition mentally for me is I come from such a formatted media world that it's a bonus, because I
Right.
can help clients that we work with on a regular basis to make sure that their content looks and sound good, by also keeping the authenticity in there. So we'll take out all the mistakes and do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not as heavily formatted. It's not, you don't have to do a time check every 10 minutes. You don't have to drop the weather every,
Right.
you
Yeah.
don't need to do on a podcast because it's not relevant, because it's always going to be there. This conversation, if Rich decides to keep it, will always be somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, there's no way. I don't care if this is a train wreck or not. It's going. It's it's going on the internet.
but that's the whole thing. So, and you talk to people who have done archivist work and said, oh, I wish we had, some of the archive of some of those early television shows that were live, and it's gone because there was no way to archive it all and keep that, the acetate tape intact and for long enough for it to be now something that is now in a digital format. This allows you to have your IP, your intellectual property, out there forever. And if it evolves, guess what? You bring the new, you bring the new intellectual property out there into the space. And if you're like, Rich Dow, which is you, Rich, by the way, just one.
Oh, thank you. I was unsure.
But you can have those organic, off the cuff conversations if they're a little bit, if they go down a path that maybe is, we need to censor this. Well, there's a button on, most of your podcast host sites. You can say, oh, kids can't listen to this.
Right.
But, other people can, and they can be engaged by that conversation. And so all of that is an evolution from where we were. So I sometimes attune podcasting to being this like the new brand of radio, because so many people can access it. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. Yes, you can, invest a bunch of money, which is, the clients we work with, to help them get in the space, or you could do it casually and simply. And either way, you're getting into the space in whatever capacity it is, I think is the most important thing, because it shows some continuity in your messaging. It shows so many things, especially those embracing it in a business sense. If it's more of an entertainment type piece, okay, well, there's some different rules, I guess, maybe not rules, but there's different things to consider, but it's still more accessible than, for example, Rich, if we were talking 25 years ago and you said, hey, I want to be on the radio, it'd be like, okay, well, go to school, get a 2-year diploma, and then go find a job that'll allow you to have your own radio show that you can talk about whatever you want to talk about within reason, because we don't want to get sued. We don't want to have, lose our license. And, down in your corner of the world, it's the FCC. We don't want to lose our licensing and lose all of our credibility. So you got to play within our field. Well, no, you don't have to do that with podcasting. You get to basically decide on how you're going to structure it, which is really kind of cool, because it's, like I said earlier, it's your show, Rich. It's not mine. It's yours. Yeah. Right. So, and we get to have fun in this space. So that's the other thing is,
yes,
you get to have fun. And a lot of the reasons I got into radio, thinking back to 1997, and as a kid when I grew up, radio then was fun. Like, you had all these characters that, radio DJs would bring these characters to life on the air, and you couldn't wait to listen to the, thinking of some of the characters that I listened to I grew up in Hamilton, just outside of Toronto. So listened to a lot of Toronto radio, and they had characters like Mr. Goohead and Mr. Canoe Head, and, they had Mr. Science, all kind of these weird characters that would do crazy things.
Oh yeah.
That they don't exist anymore, because there's so many other ways that we get information and entertainment that those characters just, there's nobody tuning on the radio to say, I can't wait to hear what Mr. Canoehead's going to do next, unless they grew up in the 80s and 90s and listened to that character, right? So anyways, that's, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a few points here. I mean, I remember, this was probably early 2000s, late 90s. The classic rock station here had a fella, and they would do, it would be Confucius, and it would just be something Confucius say, and something super, like, it's just a weird play on words and a pun, but it was like a cult classic type of thing. The other thing I wanted to mention, and it's a bit of an analogy that popped into my head. You're right. When you look at the formatted ways that radio was, and you look at it now, where it's basically like a buffet without the worry of getting COVID,
Yeah.
And it's also very, very funny that like history is kind of repeating itself, because you remember, you see the old movies where all the kids are sitting around the radio hearing the 6 o'clock show. What are podcasts, man? Two conversations, or maybe somebody telling a story. Maybe you're listening to the true crime thing. Maybe somebody's giving you fantasy football analysis or whatever. Insert literally whatever you can put in there. It's a little sidebar here. The whole mantra behind why we started, and mind you, we have been in business for a little over 100 days now.
Oh, good stuff.
So yeah, I am.
Good.
Yeah, I'm grass green, but we also have a boatload of episodes, and
Right.
It is a passion thing. We keep pushing it out and getting better and evolving, because you're silly if you don't. But what's interesting is my mantra behind this is that I've always been a podcast listener, and I wanted this to become something where, instead of the podcast being in the background, instead of the podcast being in the background and you're doing whatever you're doing while you're listening, I wanted us to be able to shift the focus to the podcast, and whatever thing you're doing in the background ends up being the background noise. So it's evolved and changed and become a bunch of different things. But yeah, there's a absolute beauty in saying, this is mine. I'm going to do what I want with it within reason, because you have to have it stay in your own little moral code.
Of course.
But yeah, I it's almost silly to think back on how, okay, here's your script on what you can talk about on the radio, and that just, how fun is that? That just you're listening to an audiobook at that point.
What's funny is too is and it'll continue to evolve for you, by the way, as you go along. So what you're doing today, I always share this with podcasters too, as they come into our space. When we're working with them, I say, don't go back and listen to your earlier episodes, because
We do that.
you'll want to change them. And I'm like, don't change. Allow the evolution to do what it's going to do. It's, you wouldn't go back to the original. Well, actually, I guess we did go back to the original Star Trek series and sort of change things a little bit, but you're not going to go back to the actual original series and revive everybody from the dead and say, okay, well, we know what we can do differently now, because technology is different and the world is different. So we're going to completely rewrite what we do.
Right. Nothing is canon. It's fine.
But people like to do that in the podcasting space. They go, you know what? I did that show 4 years ago. I want to change it. Why? Just let it go. Keep it what it is. And then allow yourself to expand and grow, and allow the show to grow how it's going to grow. That's how radio evolved. Radio was, if I'm not mistaken, it was like somewhere around 1909, 1910. Some guy on Christmas Day, sending a broadcast message or something to somebody else. I'd have to go back and refigure it out, or playing Silent Night or something like that on a recording. That was kind of the first ever broadcast. Well, we don't do that now. Radio's evolved, right? But even radio in the 30s is different from what radio became in the 50s, and was different from radio in the 70s and 80s. And it completely evolved. So you can't go back and change it just because of evolution. You have to allow yourself to grow within that. And some of those pioneers, so I consider people in podcasting now, even though podcasting has been around for about 20 years, I still consider people coming into the industry now, because podcasts have grown a lot since COVID. So since 2019, we went from, I think, about 750,000 to 1 million to almost 5 million. Yeah,
wow.
to almost 5 million shows now,
Jeez.
Right? So in that 3 to 4 year period, it's exploded, which is great. It's, basically guaranteed income for me based on the work that I do.
Yeah,
but it
fair
was
enough.
a great opportunity for people to almost be a pioneer in this space, because it's going to continue to grow and evolve. And if I were to gaze into my crystal ball, if you said, well, Carl, where do you see it going? I say, okay, well, I can see us having like a minimum standard, and I'm not saying that this isn't a standard, because it is, because you've thought this out a little bit. You've decided what it's going to be. What I mean by minimum standard is people who are just going to flip open the microphone with no equipment and no set idea of where it's going. That's probably going to disappear a little bit more. this show has a little bit more formatics. I know you say it's a very open-ended conversation, but you're still having a conversation that makes sense, right? It's
Right.
not just, okay, here's another podcast episode. What am I going to talk about today? Or, hey, guest, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. What do you want to?
Right.
That type of very
Nobody wants that.
clumsy programming, I think, will disappear. People will have to come into this space with a little bit more clarity with what they want to talk about. Even if it's not fully mapped out, they'll need to do that. Plus, I think some of those shows that have disappeared, or they've been abandoned, what we call, I have a colleague who calls it podgatory. It's those shows that have sort of, people did them for a while. Maybe they only did a few episodes. Maybe they did it successfully for a few years or longer. And they've sort of just left them. Like, I don't want to do podcasting anymore. I'm done. But the shows still are there. And by the way,
Right.
podgatory represents about 40% of the podcasts out there. So I can see those.
Really?
Yeah. So I
Okay.
think we're kind of going into an archival space, or maybe completely disappearing if they really didn't have any impact. But really that minimum standard, and you're already seeing this with platforms like Apple and Spotify. They're saying, well, if the recording levels aren't here and the decibels aren't here and this isn't here, or the video isn't at this quality, we're really not going to really give it much love. So I can see that coming into place. I can see also more opportunities, though, for people to collaborate more deeply,
Right.
because it's not an easy platform to get on. It's also hard to go and reach other podcasters, because you almost have to do either a connection through Alex Sanfilippo. We love
Yep.
you. That's why we're
Yeah.
here.
Good man.
But that's going to, I think, allow, and guys like Alex Sanfilippo, who are really pioneering in this space, there's going to be more of those opportunities to collaborate with podcasters, I believe, directly. But we'll see how it goes. But I think there will be also more opportunities for people to generate revenue for business, but also generate revenue in the terms of sponsorship and monetization. We're already seeing it. Sponsorship has been around in the podcasting space for years, but we're seeing people leveraging monetization differently too. They're not just relying on their 50,000 downloads to be able to get $50 in sponsorship every month. They're really looking at it differently and leveraging joint venture partners and drawing people to their website and doing other things to really get into that space with a little bit more strategy, right? So certainly business owners that are saying, how am I going to navigate through this space? That's going to happen. But I also think we'll see an entertainment, the entertainment side of it change too, where certain program, I think we're already seeing it actually. There are programs that will say, and by the way, if you want an extension of the show, listen to our podcast. Look at shows like Entertainment Tonight and shows like that. They probably all have podcasts as well that you get.
Yeah.
After show, right? So we're going to continue to see that evolution in not just with the big networks, but we're going to see it in with guys like you, Rich, who are going to say, you know what, we've got the podcast, but then we've got the after show too, which is going to feature, I don't know, Carl Richards. It'll be jugglers. I don't know, whatever it's going to be. We'll see that evolution.
It's already there, buddy.
I don't.
It's already.
I can play cards, but I don't.
No, it's already there, and it's insanely funny that you said that. So I have 3. Well, we'll have 3 in about a week, because we're gonna have a foot. Funny enough, the name of the new podcast is Foot Bald, because we're both bald. So I'm a dad joke guy. But I have the X's and O's with my co-host, and I have Pillow Talk with my wife. But me and Jermaine, my co-host for the X's and O's, we actually, and this is something that I just kind of came up with one day, after we recorded, because we do it remote. After we recorded, I would just go outside and you would just talk about the show. Yeah. And I sat here and thought, like, why am I not recording this? This is just, I mean, it's behind the scenes stuff. It's not formatted or anything like that. It's just like, half the time we have better ideas than we had on the show on the post game. And ironically enough, we ended up naming it the post game. So we actually have that on Patreon for $1. So it's just one of those. It's just funny that you said that with the post game content. It's like, I beat you to the punch, buddy. But you're definitely right. I mean, you think about, how many people give up on the podcast because it's not lucrative. It doesn't bring them money. If you stay the course, and I said this to somebody this morning, I understand this is not a lucrative venture, potentially. I mean, it can be,
Sure.
but you need to stay in the game and you need to keep your passion. And if you really, really want it, something will come of it. But you got the purgatory, like you said. That's definitely going to be a tag on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry, yeah.
yeah.
I'll make sure you have the correct spelling on it.
Oh yeah, because I'm going to completely butcher that. Yeah, you got to give me the Canadian spelling. I know
The
it's
Canadian
all
spelling.
goofy up there.
There's a silent Q or no,
Okay.
or there's an extra vowel in there somewhere. Just we're Canadian.
Somehow there's a QUE somewhere stuck in there. I don't know.
Oh, you've noticed. Oh, thanks for pointing that out.
Well, listen, you're welcome. We have to give you hell for giving us all the smoke from up north. So
Yeah.
we always knew you guys were nice people. You just don't have to
Yeah.
share everything you have.
I'd like to say, I don't know, a very serious situation, but we're just sending smoke signals your way. But it's
How
definitely
is it up there? Is it getting any better? Or
actually it's not. It's where I am. I'm about 2.5, 3 hours, maybe even further than that from the wildfires here. So it's not too bad, but
yeah,
we still have air quality. Our nation's capital is about an hour and a half from where I live, and they're still saying in their forecast, they're saying mix of sun and cloud, chance of showers, local smoke, high of so it's right in the forecast. Whereas I've never heard it in a forecast ever. I lived in northwestern Ontario, so the other side of our province, where it was forest fire season every summer.
yeah,
Not like right in your community, but you never knew where the forest fires were and when they would pop up. And never, ever, ever, ever do I remember hearing, or even because that was actually the start of my broadcasting career, do I ever remember saying, oh, by the way, the forecast is sunshine, could see some showers this afternoon, local smoke. I never, ever, ever had that in the forecast. But the air
yeah.
quality index is so much in the toilet these days. I saw somebody or some memes about it saying the air quality this summer. Uh, I'm trying to remember the way the meme phrases it, but air quality this summer be like bingo halls from the 80s.
Oh no.
Like it's
Yeah,
tongue in cheek, it's funny, but it is very, very serious in certain
yeah.
areas. But yeah,
It's sad. I mean, what are they doing up there about it though? Like that's kind of my question because
there's
it,
there's it's funny because I learned a few things living in Northwestern Ontario. A lot of the fires that they fight, they're not above ground. Fires, this is a lot of things. People don't understand this. Fires can burn underground.
oh, that's this nightmare fuel, buddy. What are you doing?
So fires can burn underground because the tree roots, if the conditions are dry enough, tree roots are like tinder. So it'll just as you just
Mm,
get one fire under control, another one is already brewing underground and sparking up somewhere else. So that's some of the issues that they're having, but it's so dry in certain regions that it's just the conditions. It's so dry, it's so humid, not enough moisture in the air, not enough moisture in the ground, and you can only the other thing is the number of fire crews is lower. And here's the other issue: there's fires everywhere. There's fires in Greece. There's fires in Canada. And Canada's massive. There's fires all over British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec. Um, I don't know about Alberta, but there's certainly fires. In the number of fires that are being fought this year are more than they've ever had to fight. It's probably double, if not triple, the number of fires this year. So that's the other issue. There's all these
goodness.
fires, and we also send crews to other parts of the world where there's fires. So when there's fires in California, for example, we will send crews down there, or Greece. We've sent crews to Greece as well. There's just not enough control. So it's getting under control. A good douse of rain for 2 or 3 days. I know nobody
Yeah.
wants to hear the word rain in the summer, but it would really help to bring things under control. I'm not a fire expert, but that's just some of what I've heard on
Yeah.
our national broadcaster and newscasts and stuff like that. Is that we really need some rain in the forecast and consistent rain. The forecast when I was a kid all the time was actually I just told you sunshine, maybe some clouds in the afternoon, chance of late day showers. You need those late day showers to cool things down. When I was a kid, my mother would say, "Here's a bar of soap. Go run out and play in the rain and
Eh,
warm up while you're at it." Right. So you need that. That's not that we didn't have baths or anything as kids. I don't want you to think my parents didn't let us bathe in a tub or anything in the summer and made us roll around in the snow in the winter to get clean. No, that's not what I mean. But it was a standing joke, right? You go run around with a bar of soap. It's raining. But you had more of that, and now there are parts of on I don't know about Ontario, but I know there are parts of BC that haven't had rain since May.
Good night.
So
Wow.
that's an issue too. So you combine all of that. That's where
Jeez.
that's sort of a part of the challenge. And we also have developed communities in regions where we want to be so close to nature, but unfortunately, when nature rears its ugly head, sometimes we go,
Yeah.
okay, why are you biting us back with floods and fires? And but you're living right in the middle of nature. so
Yeah.
so anyway, so there's a number of different things at play there. So but I just want to go back to something that you said
Yeah.
earlier about the Podgatory and playing in the space, and the fact that
Mhm.
there are already some of those after shows out there. And you're right, there are some of those after shows already out there, and that's going to continue to evolve because I think we're lovers of that behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know about you,
What
but
I'm not supposed to be able to see, kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I grew up. It was a big thrill when it would, there would be like a 2 hour television special on the making of The Empire Strikes Back, and they would kind, if heaven forbid it started at 7, you're like, I hope it starts at 8. So we did dinner dishes can be done, all of that stuff. So you could watch and see what are some of the things that they do behind the scenes, and we're seeing more of it. You're right, or we're doing it now, but I think we'll see more and more of it, and we'll see more community come from that, and more leveraging of, you mentioned Patreon, that you're leveraging Patreon as a value add for this behind the scenes piece that you're doing. We're going to be seeing more of that as people build out that community. They want to see more of that. And people who are doing this for business, they'll be able to leverage other aspects of their business behind the scenes, or masterminds, or Facebook groups that they've created that meet once a month or whatever. Which again, we're seeing that. But again, I think we'll just continue to see more of it as podcasts evolve.
It's just such a wild thing because the literal opportunities are endless.
Oh,
Like there just isn't any, like I I could sit here and put on Patreon. Here is a half hour of me playing with the puppy.
yeah.
Someone may jump into it. It's like, oh, I like a puppy. Or you have the, hey, let's see what these, because I know I keep saying it's not formatted, and it's not. When I say it's not formatted, this is really what I mean. We come up with a subject and we don't talk about it till we get on the podcast, and we have the organic responses. And the really actually cool thing from a selfish standpoint is me and Jermaine have absolutely learned a boatload about each other via the podcast. It's like, I didn't even know that. It's like, yeah, man, that's something that randomly didn't come up.
Mhm.
And I think having that post show reinforces that, because I know it sounds good in theory to not have a general plan, but when you see it kind of in action, it's like, oh, these guys ain't BSing. They really are kind of just shooting from the hip and having a good time, and talking about some heavy stuff. And yeah, so it's beautiful.
But the other side of that is true too, and kudos for developing that. I'll say behind the scenes, but that pre-show, who are we bringing on? What are we going to talk about? As opposed to, and again, I alluded to it earlier, where people just say, I have no focus, no goal.
Right.
But for individuals who are, I don't want to say more savvy, because I'm not saying you're not savvy, but I'm saying
No, say how you mean, but see how
for
you.
for people who are looking at this space as in, I need to go in with a plan. I need it to. You mentioned something earlier, and this will help to explain where I'm going with this train of thought. You mentioned something about people just flipping open the microphone, spewing out some content, and hoping that it's going to make the money, and then
Mhm.
getting frustrated when it doesn't. Well, that's the wrong way to look at it. It's not, how is my podcast going to make me money? It's, what value am I going to bring
Yes,
to,
there you go.
so I can make, so then the podcast itself is generating revenue to my business, or to my Patreon, or to my whatever it is. So if it is a very free flowing format like this, and you've already said you're leveraging Patreon, kudos to you for doing that. That'll continue to evolve, and it might continue to evolve for business as well. A lot of business owners will come in and say, I want to do a show, I want to bring on guests, and it's going to make me money. It has to make me money. That's not how you need to look at it. You need to look at it the way we look at other marketing aspects. And we don't look at marketing as it needs to make us money. We people will spend, anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars on a website. And a website by design doesn't make you money. Yes, there are funnels and there are things like that you can develop and build that will take people through the client cycle to get you to the product, the service, or whatever it is. But a website by design doesn't make you money. It can, I guess, if you've got your product right there, but you need to have that there, right? So it needs to be where you're bringing people to you, right? As opposed to, and again, throw back to radio. Radio was DJs like me who would interview the expert, and I was paid by an employer. And the expert is still going to sell books one way or the other. If it was the other way around, where as a DJ, I had to try and make money from this interview, well, now it's a different model. Now we're getting into what podcasting is, but you still need to be coming to this space as, especially if you're doing it for business, you need to come here as the expert. If you're coming here as the person that wants to draw awareness, you still need to bring that passion. If it's your passion project, if you're bringing it on like Rich is, you need to have that piece where you're willing to have that casual, free-flowing conversation, but you're still going in with at least a rough idea. You just didn't find me on the back of your cereal box and say, I'm just going to bring him on and send him an invite. Let's see what he's going to talk about. I'm not on a cereal box.
That's what you think.
Yeah.
It was a milk carton.
But again, the other reason why we have a guy like Alex Sanfilippo who connects podcasters up with guests and guests with podcasters, because you don't just want anybody on your show. You want specific people on your show, even if who you want on your show is a little bit more broad. You're not necessarily dealing with, I want this niche person on my show. For example, a real estate investing show might have more partners of real estate investors come on their show. They wouldn't necessarily have, they might not have as free flowing a conversation. They might, but it's probably a little bit more formatted. Yeah. But again, it's still less formatted than radio, but still has its function and its purpose. And that's the big piece, is when you're going in there, what is the purpose of the show? Is it to have some organic conversations? What is it? And if that's what it is, that's fine. That's the difference, I think, in the podcasting space, is you don't need to go in with it has to be like this. And kudos to you for being here, Rich. It'll continue to evolve for you, as I already said. It'll be a different show a year from now.
Oh, it's already evolved a few times. We started with the X's and O's of Life was supposed to be a family-friendly thing, and then we had another one that was called BDE Street, and that was the explicit version of we'd cover heavier topics. Literally, why we stopped the BDE Street is because the wife said, this thing sucks. I'm not listening to it anymore. It's like, oh, my heart. Okay. Yep. All right. Fair enough. Yep. Yeah. And then I sat back and realized there's not a lick of difference between the two of these things. They're not anything more except more ings and ers in the other one. That's not, what's that appealing? So we killed it, and then we kind of have made a little podcast baby, and instead of the shows being an hour, they're an hour and a half. The show is an hour and a half, and it takes the aspects of the other one and puts it with the other one, and they have a little weird incestual baby. And I am very green to this, but I'm also a smart fella and a fart smeller. And you're welcome. But I look at it like this.
You do in your own time, Rich. That's entirely up to you. But
yeah, hey, well, sometimes you got to be into weird stuff. You can see more of that on the Patreon. But thinking about, if you stay stagnant in any business, you're an idiot. Any business that you just wade water in and make no evolutions, whether it be this quick. I'm 110 days into this podcast journey, and I've evolved this thing like 3 times. Cool. But every time I do it, and you did mention the whole don't listen to your old podcast and change it. Well, funny enough, we occasionally do, and we don't change it, but we look at it and we cringe, and we're like, oh my God. But we look at it as look how far we've come. And it's a proud thing, and it makes you just want to keep going and do better. And I think that's where a lot of people fall off. As soon as they don't see those dollar amounts, they're like, I'm not doing this. This isn't doing anything.
Yeah, and
And
they'll go back and listen to their old content and say, "Man, I
mm-hmm.
suck," and the audience is hearing me suck, and I don't want to do this because I suck. And they're also they're filling their minds with self-defeating prophecy, right? They're saying,
Right.
"I'm bad at this. Why am I even doing this?" But they're not allowing themselves to stay the course, because 100 days in, congratulations. I'm glad you're here. It's a great space. You're going to love it. You're going to continue to love it. I hope.
I do.
We don't want you in purgatory. We don't want to see you there in 2 years.
No.
There. But here's the thing. It's a long game, not a short game. If you're looking at
Yes.
podcasts to make
Yes.
money, it's not going to happen overnight unless you're Oprah Winfrey or Joe Rogan or somebody that already has that, a Rolodex of clients, or
Right. You have to build it.
or that, if you're like Joe Rogan, made people eat a bunch of goofy stuff and make scale, 360-degree mountains, basically a straight line, climb this hill. Unless you have that to your name, guess what? It's going to be a bit of a slog. It doesn't mean you won't be successful. It doesn't mean you can't embrace, as Rich has said, they use Patreon as that after show piece, and there's other things that I'm sure you do in that Patreon space, Rich. But understand, you're not going to get that I want to make $1 million with my podcast in the first 6 days. It's not going to happen unless you are Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins, Joe Rogan, those kinds of people that already have that celebrity status or proven track record already. It's going to take some time. So stay the course, allow yourself to evolve. When you go listen to your shows, don't listen with a critical ear. Listen to say, oh my God, yeah, I sounded horrible back then. And if you want to give yourself some, I listened to my show back when too. I still get people listening to my first few episodes from 5 years ago. I say, why are people listening to this? Because it's a relevance to them still today. So people will find it regardless. Allow yourself to evolve in this space and just, have some fun with it and grow with it. If you want it to, generate revenue, explore ways that you can generate revenue because of what product you're delivering or what services you're providing, not just on your website, but to the show, and leveraging other aspects of joint venture partners and things like that. It doesn't have to be about here's how my show is going to make me money. No, it's the wrong way to look at it. And that's why so many people get out, because they're like, it's not making me money. I'll tell people, don't think of it as it's going to make you money. It's a marketing tool. Because I do work with a lot of coaches and consultants, and I've mentioned real estate investors a couple times. That's part of my core clients as well. You need to look at it as a marketing tool. It would not make sense in 2023 to go take out a full $10,000 ad in your yellow pages to generate business. Wouldn't make sense. It probably wouldn't make sense for most people in business to put an ad on the radio or television. Maybe it does. I'm not saying that everyone needs to get into the podcasting space or leverage a digital platform, but the main reason why, and Rich, I'm going to make some assumptions here. One of the reasons you're here is you recognize that people are looking for you and they're looking online. So if Rich has a show that's free flowing and casual and fun, and he has interesting guests on, great. If it works for Rich, phenomenal. Carl Richards has a show, 2 of them actually. Oh, you have 2 or 3 shows too. So I have shows. One's about podcasting. The other one's all about public speaking and leveraging what other speakers have learned in their day. Rich, maybe you want to come on one of those shows. We'll have a chat after today.
Absolutely.
But they're both we're both relevant podcasters. We're both doing the podcast the way we want to do it.
That's the important part.
We're allowing ourselves to evolve within that space. And we're both looking at it saying, I'm not going to be a millionaire from this today or tomorrow or probably even next year. But if I keep doing these same things over and over again, I will build an audience. I will build a community. I will continue to evolve. And the show will continue to evolve as well.
And to add to to piggyback off of your point of, if you're famous and you have this Rolodex of people are already going to listen to you.
Of course.
Guess what? And this is a news flash to anyone else that's listening, that wants to start something. No one gives a damn about you and what you say. Nobody cares. You have to grow that. You have to foster. It's like planting a seed. You have to take care of it. You have to treat it as an organic, as a thing that's going to grow and build. If you, and this is the problem with, here's my old man get off my lawn moment. With the current generation, it's very instant gratification. Oh, this didn't make me. I'm not a TikTok star after a week. I'm not doing it. No, this is a long. You are building. You are building relationships. You're building your voice. You're building your presence. There is a lot that happens. Yes, there are anomalies where oh, a kid did a backflip and landed in a bottle. What? Okay, fine. Now he's famous because God is silly sometimes. Whatever. But if you're doing a business, and just any business, and I treat this like a business to the point where you're my second out of 5 recordings today, and then I have 2 more tomorrow.
Cool.
I have, and a little peek behind my curtain, I have absolutely, let's say I've driven a wedge between me and the wife, but I work too much for her liking. But something like this, if you're passionate about it, treat it like a business. Treat it, and the more you care, the more you're going to get out of it, whether people are listening or not. If you're saying what you want to do, if you're doing what you want to do, who's to say you're doing something wrong?
There's a story about the, and to that point, Rich, there's a story about the, I wish I could remember. I forget more than what I remember.
Story of my life. I get you.
There's a woman, and I wish I could remember her name, but she was responsible for starting a very world famous opera company or opera hall somewhere in Nevada. I don't know if it was Vegas or it's somewhere else. It's somewhere in Nevada, and she built this basically a theater. The whole concept of if you build it, it will come. Right? She built this theater,
Right.
and nobody came, and she performed.
Oops.
And she performed on stage in this theater for I don't know how many days or weeks or months until people eventually started to take notice of this famous facility, which is now, as I said, it's worldly renowned. But when she started, after she built it, she's like, nobody's here. Nobody's buying tickets. And you know what? She went out and on stage and performed every night, whether there was an audience or not. And now and again, I wish I could remember the name of it. Now I got to look it up. Thanks, Rich.
You're welcome.
But it's a story that's worldly renowned. It's like the story of Starbucks. Same basic premise, right? Starbucks wouldn't exist today if they didn't go through over or something like 500 investors telling them no. Starbucks wouldn't exist today. It was that 501st or 429th or whatever the number was where they said, interesting. This is a different concept. Yes, by all means, let's do it. So that's why staying the course is crucial, because you never know what you're putting out there. And again, in this space, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a sports fan and just want to go and talk about sports and
Right.
different aspects of that. It doesn't matter if you have, a business like mine where it's helping podcasters get launched and maintaining their shows. It doesn't matter if you're a guy like Rich who, is bringing people to this platform. It doesn't matter what you do. It's staying the
Do something.
having the moxie. I'm censoring myself. Having the
No,
moxie.
go ahead. Believe me, this is absolutely say what you want to.
I'm going to do this regardless. I'm going to have the cojones to keep at it and not worry about the money, because we worry about the money so much. Anything I've learned about money is do what you're doing now, the money comes later.
Right.
Keep doing what you're doing if you're doing it the right way. I mean, if you're doing it the wrong way,
Right.
that's not going to be, lead to a successful business, right? Or if you're doing something that isn't relevant to people anymore. If you come up with a new fancy buggy whip, well, it's not a very viable industry.
Are you sure?
We
talk about the printing press, maybe.
There are still buggy whips that are sold because there are communities that don't, there are Mennonite communities, the
Yeah, but
option.
they don't lose. They don't use electricity. They can't even hear the podcast. Who cares?
But it's not, yeah, exactly. But it's not like, okay, I've created this new thing that's going to go in every car, right? So,
Right.
but you have to realize that as long as you stay the course and you're doing something that makes sense, and you have somebody that you can check in with on a regular basis, be it a business partner, be it a business coach that will say, you know what? Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about the money. You have to feed yourself, obviously, but don't stress about, have I made my $1 million yet? Or have I made my 2 million or my 10 million? Is my podcast making me a gazillion dollars? Don't worry about that. Stay the course. Do what you're going to do. Allow it and you to evolve, and eventually, it will happen.
Yeah. Look, like I said, about 110 days in, and I have approximately each episode's about an hour, give or take a little bit more. I got about 43 hours of content in 110 days.
Awesome.
Um,
Phenomenal.
I I I feel that from an investor standpoint or a business standpoint or whoever's looking at this, okay, they've been around for this number of time and they have this amount of content. What are they doing? Like why? What is keeping them going? Like what service are they providing? And that's where I feel a lot of people fall off. Like when they fall off, it just makes people like entrepreneurs as myself here. I mean, I hate to put myself as a title there, but spade here. It shines a bigger light on you, and it's
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm doing what I'm loving. I'm enjoying it. Am I making a dime off of it? Hell no. I'm working in the red. But I also have a full time job. So does the wife. This obviously isn't. I'm not going 2 feet into this yet
Right.
until it actually can make money, and I have a wealth of knowledge that it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, and that's the other thing too, is understanding that if there are ways to have your podcast make money, and that's where you can't just say, I have a podcast making me money. It's just, there's a
Right.
system, there's a way to allow it to do that. And this isn't it. That's no disrespect to what you're doing. It's not but there's a system and there's a way that and that's part of the evolution that I'm talking about. By the way, my podcast directly doesn't make me money either. So it's not your podcast doesn't make you money, because neither does mine. But mine is positioned to allow myself to grow it from a business perspective. You're treating it as a business and you're allowing it to evolve naturally. And 100 days in, if you've got that much content under your belt, I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness, like,
Thank you.
congratulations. And it's only going to continue to evolve. And that's why, again, I share with people, don't go listen to those first earlier episodes because you'll get disappointed with yourself. Allow yourself to walk on that journey and continue to evolve. It's like, I remember when I started my speaker training business, and I was, not much better than a Toastmaster, right? I was slightly above that, but I knew in order for me to be a proper speaker trainer, I needed to go get training. I needed to go get coaching. And then I needed to go get clients who are not better than I was, right? I need to get clients who were needing to evolve in the business space. They needed to improve their elevator pitches in business meetings or networking settings, people who could, help them deliver a 10-minute talk in a setting and then help them evolve it to a 30-minute talk or an hour-long talk. I did that for 7 years, 8 years before then transitioning to where I am now. So I got really good at that. But my first, 100 days in, guess what? I sucked. That was horrible. I wasn't making any money at it. I had like, I would do things like, in the business sense, I would say, I'll do 5 sessions and it's only going to cost you, it's only going to be $147. I was giving it away for free because that's what so many people do when they're just starting out.
Right.
So the same thing here in the podcasting space. You know, Rich, your show will evolve. Mine continues to evolve. Everyone's show, if you stay the course, it
Right.
will evolve. And it's positioning it the right way, which you've done, by the way. You've done a really good job with this.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and you will continue to, retweak and refine and recalibrate as needed. It's just like every now and again you have to take take your car in for a checkup to make sure the oil's topped up and the tire
Right.
pressure's right, and unless you have an electric, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But whatever it is you need to do to make sure that the vehicle is operating correctly. It's the same with your business. It's the same with your podcast. You might need to recalibrate every now and again. And when you finally, and I say this because I have a client who did this 6 months ago, she said, I am leveraging my podcast to generate revenue for my business, much like her live events did pre-COVID. Well, now that's a different type of podcast, right? It's not
Right.
the type of podcast that you hear all the time. But you know what? She went and got the training because I didn't have it. She went and got the training that she needed to do that. And I've learned so much from her through that course, which is kind of funny because now I can share that with people and also leverage it. But her show has evolved. The name of her show has evolved. The way she delivers her content has evolved. And she's still a podcaster and she's still enjoying the journey as she's evolved.
That's the important part. That's the thing that I think a lot of people end up omitting. I love what I'm doing. Am I working my tail off today for this on my day off? Absolutely.
Yep.
But I want to do it. That's the thing. And I do a lot of the pod match thing. I don't just agree to do whoever. I actually look at profiles and figure out who
Right.
I actually want to talk to, who's going to be interesting, who, because I got to sit here for an hour and talk to you. If I'm just going to be bored out of my mind, I don't want to do that. So it is a very selfish action I'm doing when I'm picking those people, but it also has the little, subconscious part where, look, this is a business where everybody can eat. This is not something that there needs to be a monopoly. Everyone has time. Everyone has not everyone has 2 years, but you get what I'm saying. Yep. And if you can, it's just a symbiotic unit. I talk to you, you talk to me, I share my info, you share your info, and maybe my people will listen to yours. Maybe my people will listen. No, other way around, vice versa. You know what I meant? And it's all that thingy.
Yeah,
words and stuff. That's how you grow the name and you grow the information. Because I'm gonna reach out to people that I probably never would have came across when this gets shared in your inner circle, and vice versa. And that's the beautiful, cool thing about it. And that's where I think the business part of it comes into play, where people don't realize you need to build a clientele before you start worrying about making any type of money.
Yeah.
Nobody cares who you are on the internet. You are an internet person. That is it. Yep. You need to make your stamp on the internet, and you need to be sustainable. Then people will take notice. There's so many flash in the pan things that happen. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what you're doing in a year. Then we'll maybe bat an eye at you. And you got to be okay with that.
Yeah, your internet number, blah 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 blah. It's the same as websites, right? Your website number 480 billion. Nobody cares, right? So until people have developed that know, like, and trust factor, and the other piece of that equation is in this space, and this is not me saying this. This is having talked to other people who have embraced the podcast, the podcasting format or media, whatever you want to call it. And they've really seen this transition as well, not only in their business, but they'll be at events. And again, because I work with a lot of business owners, they're at business events, right? So they'll be at events with business owners, and they'll say, "Yeah, I heard your podcast." And the person that they're talking to that says, "Oh yeah, I listened to your podcast," or "I've heard your podcast," happens to be connected to, at some level, maybe they're the direct assistant to the CEO of such and such a company that is their ideal client. So It's not just about, goes back to it's not about the money. It's about the connections and the community and the relationships that you're going to build. Community is part of that, but the relationship that you're going to build that you don't even know exist yet. Because if you're not in the space, if you're just playing in your small little pool of the world in your community, that's a pretty small pool. And it doesn't matter what you do or who you are or what your passion is, or it doesn't matter if you're doing a podcast about gardening or a casual conversation like, Rich and I are having, and, on the weekends, it's when you do your show. It doesn't matter. Or if you're doing it for business, you don't know what relationships you're going to build and the connections that you'll make to other people who might bring you the ideal guest that you want for your show, the ideal business model that you want to embrace, the whatever it is, a partnership. I've seen it happen with other podcasters. I've experienced it myself. And I look back and I say, if I didn't have a show,
right, no way I would have came across them.
I've had people reach out to me to be a guest on my show from a podcast booking agency. not this one, by the way, not Podmatch, but others, because there are many of them out there. And some of those individuals, two specifically, that have been on my show 2.5 years ago, one of them is already a client, and we're just in the process of signing a third. That wouldn't have happened or it would have been the likelihood of it happening would have been minimal if I didn't already have a show that people are already looking to get on.
Yeah. I hate to say it's who you know, but it's kind of what you never know who's listening, who's going to come across it, because that's the beautiful part about this stuff being insanely accessible on so many platforms that, based on whatever algorithm that your platform uses, this very well could just come across your timeline for whatever reason. And you're like, all right, I'll be your Huckleberry. Let's take a gander here. And you take a look, and it's like, well, this wasn't the worst thing I ever heard. Let's go ahead and sub to it and see what else they got going on. And then and I'm not, if you're one that's going to latch onto that pipe dream, then you're a box of stupid. Understand that's more of the unlikely thing that can happen, but you're still talking to people. Like, that's the thing. This is on the internet. Internet stuff doesn't go away. It's there. If someone wants to find it, they'll find it. That's how things are shared. So I don't know. I think it really just irritates me hearing people just give up on a quote unquote dream that they had. And it's like, hey, that's cool, man. Let me take your spot.
You get into the space for the right reason, for sure. But then also, it's one of my pet peeves about YouTube, and this is probably going on YouTube or will be at some point. But one of my pet peeves about YouTube is this behemoth of a file sharing or information sharing platform, and everyone thinks of it as a supreme being, and it's not. YouTube isn't God.
Right.
YouTube is YouTube. YouTube has its own systems and its own. So for those people who think, oh, I have to be on YouTube. I have to be on YouTube. I need to be. I need to boost my subscribers on YouTube. Okay, if that's your goal, if that's what you want to do, by all means, go and do it. But if your goal is to be out there and showcasing what it is that you do, or your passion, or to have conversations like Rich and I are having, YouTube is only one of probably 40 or 50 platforms between audio and video that you can latch onto rather. So don't put all lock, stock, and barrel into YouTube, especially because YouTube has their own. It used to be. I remember
got a lot of rules out there. It's a Wild West.
I remember being at an event back about, I guess it's about 10 or 11 years ago, and one of the presenters was talking about how to leverage your business, and the subject of YouTube came out. And at the time, it didn't matter how many subscribers you had on your YouTube channel, you could click the monetization button.
Yeah.
You could click it. And I think I went back home after being in that session and I clicked it. I don't have an active clicked monetization button anymore, because at some point YouTube came along and said, well, unless you have this many subscribers or views or downloads or whatever, we're not going to allow you to tap into monetization until you're at that point.
And I get both sides of it. It makes sense.
People will spend hours and hours and hours trying just to get that little button clicked.
Right.
And I'm like,
until they realize you make a penny per view.
Why? I mean, again, if your content's ready to do that, by all means, I would not stop you. But leverage the other ones out there. But again, the whole thing is stay the course. Leverage audio and video if you want to do. Just leverage audio if you want to.
We just started doing video the last episode, because one of the guests I spoke with, he's like, yeah, man, you probably really want to kind of put that out there. It's not like you're doing any more effort with it. You're just kind of putting it out there on the video format. It's like, yeah, you know what? Fair enough. I mean, give people faces to the names, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm not worried, because look, I use Spreaker. Spreaker is my kind of homepage, I guess, and everything siphons off that. I make about a penny per download.
Yep.
Don't worry. Let me tell the mortgage people that I'll get right on that.
Both of my podcasts, by the way, are audio only.
Yeah.
And can they be video? Sure, absolutely. Should they be video? Yeah, maybe. But again, my first podcast I launched 6 years ago, and it was an evolution in
Mm-hmm.
that show. I had some great things happen in my career. So there was a 6 month period where I wasn't even posting content to my podcast. When I also launched my podcast, I was misinformed, and I only launched it on Apple.
Mm,
Kind of a
okay.
crazy
Yeah.
do. But again, you don't know what you don't know, right? Now I'm on all the platforms. I'm on
Yep.
ones that I can access through my host site. But I'm at like 12,000 or 15,000 downloads, which,
Nice.
oh my goodness, over 5 years, that's actually pretty good. It should be more than that. And thank you. I really appreciate that. It should
That's
be
awesome, man.
higher.
I'm a numbers guy, so I'm obsessed with the numbers a
Yeah.
little bit myself.
If I was on all the platforms from day one, my numbers would be higher.
Yeah.
Guaranteed my numbers would be higher. But I'm now at the point where I'm consistently putting out content and I'm leveraging, other people's networks. And when I have a guest on, it's just not for the sake of having a guest on, because I do
Right.
leverage it for business, right? So but I'm doing it because of or I'm really looking at it differently than maybe other people will look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I
That's
launch,
what makes you successful.
right. So, but it's again looking at it as, okay, well, mine is an audio platform only. It doesn't matter
No.
as long as somebody's listening to it. As,
Yes.
if you want it to be a video, make it a video. That's a nice thing that we have clients that come to us and say, well, can you do audio and video? And I say, yeah, I can. Do you need the video? Do you want the video? Is it a matter of your clients are there? Like, it's really about, because there's two different levels of investment. There's more resources needed to edit video than there is audio.
Right.
So that's why. And there's also more to think about when you're going on camera, especially if the image that you're putting out there, all of your branding and your colors and your background, if that all matters to you, video is harder to do.
Right.
Just putting it out there, video is harder to do. But if you're ready to do it, we're ready to play. We're ready to swim in the pool with you. We'll dive in feet first, or head first, I guess. Well, maybe we'll dive in feet first. I think that's called a jump, though.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Fair. Depends. It depends how deep the pool is, because that.
yeah. But we're certainly willing to play ball. But again, at the end of the day, if you're saying, "Oh, I need to bolster my YouTube channel," some
No.
people just say, "I think we need to look at the real reason for the show then."
Right.
So, anyways, that's my thoughts and my rant and my rave. And
I appreciate it. Look, I mean, not this is by far not a boast, but I'm currently at 531 downloads, and I would say I should be at about 1,700 in a fiscal year. So
yeah,
for an absolute, dumpster fire, grassroots, whatever thing you want to call it, to kind of get 1,800 people, not 1,800 people, but people to hit people to hit download 1,800 times is ridiculous to me.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what keeps you humble and excited, because I view it like, you don't have to do this. I need to give you a reason to do this, because after you first start, your little circle of friends, that dissipates.
Yeah.
Those people are like, yeah, okay, I gave them the downloads, I'm going to go ahead and not do that. Now you have people that are looking for you. And I'm in Pittsburgh. I had people listen to in Michigan. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I'm like, I have international views. I'm like, why? What are you doing? Don't you have better stuff to do with your day?
Isn't that freaky when you look at your stats and you go, who's listening to me in Europe, Asia?
Yeah, I got Zimbabwe and Ghana, and I'm just like, I got an email a few days ago. It was saying I'm like 221st in the UK.
That's pretty.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
All right.
But take those as wins, and
oh yeah,
for having the numbers that you have. If you can hit 1,000 downloads, and I know that number sounds really low. So if you're watching this or you're hearing this and you're saying 1,000 downloads in your first year, that sounds low. But if you can hit that in your first year, that's a successful show, and it will continue to evolve from there. Now, if you hit more than 1,000, if your goal, like Rich, as you said, 1,700 in your first year, that's phenomenal. If you can hit 1,700 or 2,000 or 3,000 in your first year, also successful. If you hit 10,000, very successful. You've obviously done something in your business, in your career, in your life that allows you to hit the ground running like that. And
Right.
I have a client that we're launching right now who has international clients. She's got clients all over the world, and we're looking at how do we make this successful so she can have some of those international clients on her show because they want to be on her show because
Right.
it's successful, even though it's just launching. That's a different strategy altogether, and that's for
Right.
another show. But seriously, it's just like you say, if you're doing it and you're just not, yeah, okay, be a numbers person if you want, but don't let the numbers bog you down. Don't go,
Have the passion. That has to be your foundation for this. Have your passion. Be excited.
I only have 500 downloads and I'm 6 months in.
Yeah. It's
You're
like,
halfway there. That's great.
right.
I only have 700 downloads. I'm 4 months in. Also great. It just,
Don't pay attention to that. Like think about 700 times someone clicked download. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. And I think
it's
that
funny
gets lost.
when I share with people what the average number is, I hear their jaw hit the ground.
Yeah.
The average number, average, okay, for a show. Now, this is factoring in that there are some shows like Joe Rogan that have millions of listeners.
Right. Yeah.
There are other people who are just starting out who have a little blip of listeners, and that's okay too. But the average number, if your show is getting you on average between 27 and I think it's 45 listeners or views per show, that's pretty good. And if it's higher than that, even better. And again, it's the evolution and staying with it and walking
Right.
the journey because it'll eventually click. My show when I started it, my speaking podcast, I don't even remember what my numbers were. I remember looking at one point going, why are there only 20? And now I look at the numbers and I go, I had 500 downloads last month, or I'm like, like, how did that
That's
happen?
super cool.
But it doesn't happen overnight,
Right.
right? So, anyways.
Well, look, man, I love this. This has been great. And I definitely want to be on your show and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about because I am a bevy of shenanigans.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you visiting me from the Great White North. You got any parting words? You want to go ahead and plug all of your things? Because I'm going to put it all in the comments anyway.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. If this is, if anything that Rich and I have said in the last hour and a bit have, really started a fire in you or ignited something in you, a passion, and you want to find out more, let's have a conversation. I'd love to answer any questions you might have. If you're thinking this is a space you want to play in, that's what I do all the live long day is I help people not only launch their shows, but maintain them month to month. We have not only one and done services, but we have programs that we run, boot camps that we run to give people a little taste of the podcasting area. So if any of that, we actually have a boot camp coming up in the middle of August, middle to the end of August. That is a great, if you want to just dip your toe in the water and see if this is for you, that might be a great opportunity to test it out and see if this is for you. Let's have a conversation, though. I think it always starts there with reaching out, always up to have a virtual coffee with people, spend 15, 20 minutes and just finding out more about you. And if you think you're a great guest for my show, let's have a conversation about that too. But
wink, wink.
Yeah, wink, wink, Rich. Podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com is the website. And like Rich said, it'll all be in the show notes or in the comments below later.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it, man. This has been Ricard Carl, I think his name is. No, I'm surprised. I appreciate you once again, though, Carl. Sincerely, I appreciate you taking out the time. I don't know, really good one. Really, really, I'm really, really pleased because I very selfishly, I'm like, get my notepad here. I do this and this and this. Yeah.
I crossed everything that I didn't have written down.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I'm glad we shared this. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on your show, and it's a great thing that you're doing and the space that you're in. I'm glad you're here. If I could just leave one parting comment before you wrap things up, it's just stay the course. If you're not in the space yet, Dive in. It's fun. Best time to start a podcast probably was about 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. So um, don't hesitate. Just, take a look at this and allow yourself to have some fun with it.
And I'm an idiot and I'm doing it. So I'm quite sure anybody else can.
And I'm going to have this idiot on my show talking
Which,
about your journey to where you are today. So I'm looking forward to that too, Rich.
absolutely. Well, boys and girls, I appreciate you guys listening. This will be uploaded in a little bit. So to all you guys, have a good day, and thanks for listening.